Well, hello and welcome to our Bible study time. It's great to be with you. We've been talking about Rebekah and Isaac getting married here. And for most people, it's hard to imagine marrying someone you've never met, never seen. But that's exactly what Rebekah did. And of course, that's exactly what Isaac did as well. And scripture says, And Rebekah and her maidens arose and rode on the camels, and they followed the man. And the servant took Rebekah and left. Now Isaac was on his way, coming from Beer Lachai, and he dwelt in the land of the south. And Isaac went forth to pray in the field toward evening. And he lifted his eyes up and saw, and behold, camels were approaching. And Rebekah lifted her eyes and saw Isaac, and she fell off her camel. And she said to the servant, Who is that man walking in the field toward us? And the servant said, He is my master. And she took the veil and covered herself. Before Rebekah even saw Isaac, for whatever she had agreed with devotion and self-sacrifice to be betrothed to him. On her way to meet her bridegroom, Rebekah saw a man approaching in the field, and somehow she knew intuitively that it must be the man to whom she was betrothed. And can you imagine what that was like for her? A lot of the Hebrew tradition says that Rebekah experienced such intense emotions at her first glimpse of Isaac that she fell off her camel. And that was a day I suspect Rebekah and Isaac would always kind of remember that kind of situation there. Maybe they talked about that in their old age. Um, so the wedding is beginning to take place, so to speak. We'll just say the first stage of the Hebrew marriage has been completed. What had yet to occur was the second stage. And there's a Hebrew word that talks about this second stage is like to be lifted up. And at that time of the bridegroom actually, this second stage, the bridegroom actually takes his bride to their marital home and they begin married life together. And here's how Scripture describes that process in relationship to Isaac and Rebekah. And Isaac brought her to the tent of Sarah, his mother, and he took Rebekah, and she became his wife. So the marriage takes place in Hebrew settings under a canopy. And so, in a sense, we're getting that with Sarah's tent right here. It's under this canopy that it happens. And so there's the celebration happens. Isaac and his bride turn out to conclude the ceremony in this special tent that belonged to Sarah. Um, well, I don't even know if we can call it a ceremony. That might be a question as we read this story. Was there a ceremony? Because we're not really told. We're not specifically told that there was any kind of a priest there or any kind of anything. If there was one at all, it was by no means the wedding of the century. There's no record of there being any music, nor are we told what the bride and groom wore. There was no minister or even a justice of the peace. It appears that the parties simply took each other and became what Scripture said, Ish and Ishah. Remember that from Adam and Eve, husband and wife. No one said anything, however, about happily ever after in this. Scripture is really no fairy tale. It just tells it the way it is. It's about to get real with people here. That there's going to be conflicts over the course of time. It's real life. We're going to hear their real life story, and we're going to watch them learn how to surrender to one another and God bringing them together. And so we're going to read about these conflicts that I say eventually bind them together even more strongly. And we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks. Right now, let's just focus on the ceremony. So, in the closing lines of the marriage second stage of the marriage. Scripture, we find for the first time in the Bible that anyone is described as loving their spouse. Isn't that amazing? The Scriptures never tell us that Adam loved Eve or even that Abraham loved Sarah. But with Isaac, however, we find the specific statement being made. Scripture says, and he loved her, and Isaac was comforted for the loss of his mother. For Isaac, romantic love is not what led to marriage, but it is what resulted from this marriage. Whatever happened, you asked, to first comes love and then comes marriage. I guess that's a good question. That didn't happen that way. We live in a world in which we say all you need is love, and love will triumph over all. But Scripture, however, seems to suggest the opposite. Scripture seems to suggest that true marriage doesn't begin with love, but that a real marriage leads to love. And this, of course, flies in the face of the conventional wisdom of our times. Movies, books, songs in our culture celebrate romantic love as the ultimate criteria for marriage. Scripture, on the other hand, suggests that if there is a strong foundation of common values, a shared destiny, a purpose in life, and mutual submission to the will of God, couples will, over time and through shared experiences, come to love one another in a meaningful way that far, far transcends romantic love. And if a couple does not share common values, share a similar sense of destiny, if there's not a mutual submission to the will of God, then all the romantic love in the world between them will result in only, I'm going to say, sorrow, not to mention some disappointment in the end. Romantic love is at its root selfish, superficial, it's conditional, it's sensual. The kind of love which a long-term marriage requires is the polar opposite of that kind of passion. What marriage requires, at least what I'm getting out of Scripture, is a passion that is selfless. It's deeply rooted. It's unshakable, and it's intensely spiritual. So I want us to ponder that today, just the beginnings of the marriage here. Now we're going to read more about their real life story, and not all of it was perfect. We're not going to see happy every day of their life. There's going to be struggles that they go through, but somehow, some way, Scripture tells us in those hardships, Isaac and Rebekah find one another, grow more deeply, or find love. And I think it's in this submission of the Lord as well. But we'll see that story later. Hope you have a great day, a great week, and I'll see you next week. Blessings. Bye.